Okay, so when I say blockchain, what's the first thing you think of? Bitcoin, right? For most people, yeah. But that's just scratching the surface. We're talking about a technology that's on the verge of changing, well, almost everything, from how we vote to how artists get paid. But there's a huge catch. This brand new tech is on a direct collision course with some very, very old laws. So let's dive in and try to untangle this whole legal puzzle.
So, what is blockchain, really? The easiest way to think about it is like a shared digital notebook. A notebook that's copied and spread out across thousands of computers. Every time someone makes an entry, we call that a block, it gets cryptographically sealed and attached to this growing chain. And this is where the magic happens. Once a block is added, it is there for good, for everyone on the network to see. It's a pretty simple idea, but trust me, it's an absolute game changer. So, what exactly makes blockchain so powerful? Well, a few things. For starters, it's decentralized. That means no single person, no company, no government owns it. You don't need a middleman. Second, it's immutable. That's a fancy way of saying once something is recorded, it's basically set in stone. You can't change it, you can't delete it. And because every single transaction is timestamped and visible to the whole network, it's incredibly transparent and super secure.
So you take all that stuff, the decentralization, the fact that it's permanent, the transparency, and you put it all together. What do you get? You get something more than just a new piece of software. You get a whole new way of creating trust and recording truth without having to rely on some central authority, like a bank or a government. And that's exactly why we can think of blockchain as this unstoppable technological force. But, and this is the big but, here's the twist. The very things that make blockchain so revolutionary, that radical transparency and its permanent, unchangeable nature, are the exact same things that put it in direct conflict with our current legal system. And that, right there, brings us to the other side of this equation. And that other side, well, it's the law. We're talking about a system of rules and regulations built over hundreds, even thousands of years for a world of paper, of central banks, of things you can physically touch. It is an immovable object, a framework that was just never, ever designed for a decentralized, borderless digital world. You know, for centuries, our laws have been built around this core idea of privacy, the right to control your own information, and maybe most importantly, the right to have it erased. So, what happens when that right slams head-on into a technology that's designed to never forget? And this slide, this really gets to the heart of the problem. On one side, you've got blockchain, where data is permanent by design. And on the other, you've got huge privacy laws like Europe's GDPR, which gives citizens the right to be forgotten. So how in the world can you have a right to be forgotten when you're using a technology that is literally engineered to remember everything, forever? It's a total paradox, right? A legal and tech headache. I mean, this is the razor's edge that developers and regulators are trying to walk right now. How do we protect our individual privacy without completely tearing down the very things that make blockchains so secure and so innovative in the first place? It's a puzzle that absolutely has to be solved if this tech is ever going to reach its full potential. Okay, so that whole privacy debate, that's just one piece of this massive puzzle. Let's talk about another really exciting but also legally tricky part of blockchain: smart contracts. Don't think of them as paper documents. Think of them as computer programs that execute themselves. The terms of the agreement are written directly into the code, and once certain conditions are met, boom, the contract automatically enforces itself. No lawyers, no middlemen. The potential here is just huge, especially for creators. I mean, just think about it. Imagine you're a musician. A smart contract could mean you get paid a tiny fraction of a cent, instantly, every single time someone streams your song. No waiting for royalty checks. Or what if you're a photographer and you automatically get a licensing fee the second someone uses your photo online? This could completely change the game for intellectual property, making sure creators get paid fairly and immediately. But you guessed it, the tech is way ahead of the law books again. Our legal system is based on humans interpreting things, on courtroom arguments. I mean, what happens when the contract is the code and the code is the law, when there's no room for interpretation? And who's on the hook when a tiny bug in that code costs people millions? Yeah, these are the kinds of questions that are giving lawyers nightmares. So, with all these huge, thorny, unanswered questions floating around, it's probably no surprise that governments all over the world are kind of scrambling. There's no single rule book for blockchain. And that's led to this really fascinating and frankly chaotic patchwork of different rules from one country to the next.
And what we're seeing is basically two different philosophies, two main camps emerging. You've got one group of countries that are basically rolling out the red carpet. They're creating favorable laws, hoping to spark innovation and maybe become the next Silicon Valley. And then you've got the other group, and they're pumping the brakes hard. They're way more worried about the potential risks of a market without a lot of rules. So let's look at some real-world examples. In the US, regulators like the SEC are being pretty cautious. They're watching, monitoring, especially with all the crypto fundraising going on. But then you hop over to places like Malta or Switzerland, and it's a totally different story. They're actively creating blockchain-friendly laws, basically saying, hey, innovators, come here. It's turned into this high-stakes global race. And right now, there's no clear winner.
So what's next? Where does this all go from here? Honestly, this is a story that's being written as we speak. It's happening in code and it's happening in courtrooms. The next chapter in this relationship between law and technology, well, it's going to be a fascinating one to watch. In a world that is moving this incredibly fast, probably the best thing any of us can do is just stay informed. It's like one of the sources we looked at for this explainer said, knowledge is power. The more we all get a handle on these complex issues, the better prepared we'll be to actually help shape where this technology goes next. And that really leaves us with the big, fundamental question at the heart of all of this. Is the law going to have to be rewritten to fit this new technology? Or is the technology going to have to be redesigned to fit the law? It really is that classic battle, the unstoppable force of technology versus the immovable object of the law. And believe me, the way this plays out is going to define our digital world for a long, long time to come.